Welcome, guys, and happy Wednesday. I'm super excited to be here with you guys, but more importantly, I am excited for our host or for our guest here tonight. Well, tonight, wherever you're tuning in and whatever time you're watching, to join us on our show. Alieshas, first of all, I want to welcome you. Welcome to Optimize Your Life. Of course, I am the host, Dylan Tucker. I'm super excited to have you on the show because I know the value that you have to offer. For those that are tuning in, guys, I want you to know Alieshas is currently working as a registered nurse. She's an absolute guru in the world of just being a healthy living enthusiast, something that genuinely excited me to have her on the show. Ultimately, she's just one of those people that loves to love up on people. She loves to share knowledge and just help people live and lead better lives. Specifically, what we're going to be talking today for the next 40 minutes, a little bit of a quicker show today, but we're going to be talking about inflammation, the impacts of it, and most importantly, Alieshas' story and how that had such a significant impact on her life and ultimately has led her to where she's at now, having started an online business, working online platform. There's a few different things going on, but Alieshas, Optimize Your Life, episode 2 on YouTube, episode 13 on Instagram. It will be spread out there. I want to welcome you. Welcome to the show.
Oh, well, thanks, Dylan. That was a very nice intro. I just want to say to you, I just love your enthusiasm. Like, it just gets me fired up. I'm super excited about this. And I'm honored that you actually asked me to come on this. I think it's a really exciting topic to talk about. I love what you stand for, so I think it's very fitting. And I'm just excited to share, hopefully, inspire people and intrigue people at the least.
Absolutely. And the reason we spoke or we're going to speak today on the idea of inflammation is because I personally feel I'm always looking for topics and looking for guests and seeing who's making a difference out in the world and in what areas. And I've had people of all walks of life on, but I've never really had somebody specifically speak to the idea of inflammation. I don't know much myself, which is why I'm excited to get educated as well. But I have to say, I do know it's very relevant in my world, and we're all going to take this specific to maybe, how we've dealt with it. Some of us, I think you're going to light up because some people don't even know they're dealing with it. So today, before we get into anything, I want to know your story. And for anybody that's just tuning in, maybe a new subscriber to Optimize Your Life, one thing you're going to find is that the story, we all have one. It's something that we'll continue to tell for the rest of our lives. And ultimately, I find that's where a lot of our most internal passion and enthusiasm lies. And so, Alieshas, how has inflammation and the idea of it become something that you've grown to be so passionate about? I'm sure, I'm taking my best guess, I could be wrong, but I'm sure that it's something to do with how it's impacted you in your life, ultimately with where you're at today and continuing to move forward now, helping other people.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I love that, you have people share their stories. I think that's super important. So my story has a few layers to it for sure. And I think something that, I like to say is just that when you're listening to other people's stories, I think a lot of the time we're waiting for this aha moment, when you're kind of waiting for that aha moment to happen in your life to be able to kind of follow that path. And I just think it's important to know that there's no two journey that's the same. And mine literally just was a journey. Like, there was no, aha moment. So to bring you way back, when I was about 19, I started having a lot of gastrointestinal issues. It all kind of started with not being able to digest things, getting super bloated, maybe a little bit too much information, but a little bit gassy, all those kind of things that I think a lot of people, suffer with. And people just think that's, just supposed to happen. Well, it's not. And things started getting worse. I then was, told that I had ulcers. I went on ulcer medication, found out 2 years later I didn't have an ulcer. I had been through many doctor's appointments trying to figure out what was going on. And to my knowledge, I honestly thought I was eating healthy. I didn't eat fast food. I didn't drink a lot. I didn't smoke. I exercised. I ate my vegetables, fruits. So to me, I was like, well, it can't be my diet. So I was at a loss. I was like, well, like, there must be something bigger, happening. And it really started to get to me. So actually in my second year of nursing, I ended up in the hospital for 5 days. And that was because my bowels, we ended up finding out, were so inflamed that nothing could even get through them. And there was no explanation for this. I had no diagnoses. They couldn't diagnose me with anything. There wasn't enough symptoms to diagnose me with anything. So I literally left the hospital with no diagnoses, no instructions on how to follow up, how to live my life from that. It was just like, oh, this was a one off, and that's kind of crappy that happened to you. So, me in my second year of nursing was like, oh my goodness, like this is what's happening in our healthcare system. Like, that was a huge deal for that to happen, not to mention this journey that had been, going on for years prior. And then I was just left with nothing. So I did a lot of my own research. And from that point, I still was watching a little bit what I was eating, still didn't really know anything. So fast forward 2 more years, still no answers. I graduated nursing and love nursing. I will always nurse. But again, it kind of started to bring me back to part of my journey and how I realized that we're so short staffed and we're so short with like the amount of um, people that we have in healthcare, that our resources are starting to get cut thin. And the education piece of it and the health promotion piece of it is lacking. So I loved nursing, but I was like, I think I am meant for something different and something more, because I'm helping people when they're at their sickest, but these people don't need to get to that point. Like, there's so many things surely we can be doing to help people before they get to that point. So in all of that, I was like, okay, thinking of all these other things I could do, maybe holistic nutrition, maybe, naturopath. I just was kind of at a loss. And my friend who does social networking, she is with Arbonne. And honestly, when she told me about it, I was like, oh no, like I'm good, thanks. Kind of like a classic response for social networking. But then she talked to me about how, it's really about health and wellness and about this alkaline diet and all this stuff about, encouraging a healthy lifestyle. And I was like, okay, I could maybe get into that. So literally 2 days later, I signed up with this company and I have never looked back. Like, this company has taught me so much. And through starting that business, I now feel like I'm on the right path. Like, my whole system, body, symptoms, everything has changed. My lifestyle has completely changed. And I'm now educating people on how to make those healthy lifestyle changes to create those like sustainable habits so that people can feel, their best, and so that people can prevent these things from happening. So that's kind of my story. I don't know.
I want to dive into that a little bit, and just ask you, just I'm listening and I'm just feeling for you in the sense that you're so young, you're going through these things. Not to mention at that point in time in your life, a lot of other stuff is happening, relationships, big real life stuff, becoming an adult and all that. I'm sure at that time where you were in the hospital and the nurses were not able to help you and were just kind of like pushing you away, it sounded like, anyways, like, how were you just throwing yourself at anything? Did you have answers? You mentioned you did a little bit of research, but how does one deal with that at such a young age when, like, I'm a big believer myself, if you're not healthy internally, then how can you live, and how can you live a good life? Now, I mean, it's easy to get up and go through the motions, but I would have just imagined as a 19-year-old taking on such significant health issues. I will go as far to say significant, because that's a lot of stuff going on there. And then not only that, but it must have affected your mental health. Like, how did you deal with that?
For sure. It was honestly, it was scary, and it might sound dramatic, but there was a point in the hospital where I thought maybe I wasn't going to make it. I wasn't walking on my own. I wasn't eating. Like, I was so sick. And I think I just had to have faith that things were going to get better, and that I knew, because there was no diagnoses, that, surely there was going to be an up. And
Mhm.
because I was in nursing school, I just kept telling myself, like, I am going to have to show people like how they can get through these, situations with somebody at their side and educating them more, whether that is like a nurse, kind of explaining a little bit more about what's going on and just, letting you into the details or the possibilities. Or at that point, I would have been, thankful to even know of the possibilities, even if they were bad, but I just felt like I was left in the dark. So I think I was excited to be a nurse and help somebody in that scenario, but then I just, really just kept thinking, well, this can't be the answer. There has to be something bigger, and I need to get better because I need to show people how they can do that.
Yeah. Alieshas, before we jump into actually talking about what inflammation is, because I think a lot of people have this conception of what inflammation is, and I don't think many of us are correct. I will boldly state that because it's easy to Google anything nowadays, but that's just the surface level of what anything is nowadays. I have to say that I personally commend you in the sense that you paralleled something that was probably one of your lowest points in your life by pursuing a career where now you're making a difference. I'm saying this to you, so hopefully the light can come on and you can carry with this for your rest of your days, in the sense that now you're making a difference in other people's lives, looking at every situation, I'm sure, under a very different light than those nurses who weren't able to help you did at that point in time in your life, right? So talk about being a game changer and talk about the type of candidate that I look for to bring on to optimize your life. Super excited to have you on here. And I want to jump right into it myself. What is inflammation? What have you learned? Obviously, you found some solutions, you found some answers now. When you look back at it unbiasedly and you just take inflammation for what it is, what should people know? What is important to know about inflammation?
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that, by the way. I think that so people need to know that it really is quite basic. It's not anything complex. You don't need to do a lot of research. Basically, inflammation is the body's natural response to fighting off something that could potentially harm you. So it is necessary to have inflammation in our body, and it is actually there to protect you. It really does become problematic when it becomes prolonged or chronic. So, most people are typically aware of inflammation in the four cardinal ways, which is like redness, heat, swelling, pain. And those are kind of all things that, you look for when you have, signs of infection or something like that, right? So, those are the good things. That's what you want your body to do. But like I said, if it is prolonged and it becomes chronic, then it can actually cause damage to your healthy cells. And when your healthy cells become damaged, they become altered. And when your cells become altered, that's how things like diseases, cancers, and stuff actually form by an altered cell. So you can imagine, in a quick explanation like that, if you are living with chronic inflammation, then I mean, you're potentially really increasing your risk for diseases and cancers. Now, I think the crazy thing is that these symptoms of chronic inflammation can actually be quite subtle. Um, it scares me and it worries me that the mass population think that if they don't have a lot of pain, or if they don't have very obvious symptoms, that they may not be living with this chronic inflammation and potentially making them themselves like higher risk, right? So symptoms could be as subtle as chronic fatigue. That's a sign of inflammation. Chronic inflammation. Sore joints, that's a sign of inflammation. Mouth sores, canker
Mhm.
sores, if you're getting those a lot of the time. Mood disorders, that's a
Wow.
huge one. Mood disorders. You balance your gut, then your hormones all of a sudden become balanced, then your mood all of a sudden becomes balanced. So 80% of your
Wow.
serotonin, your happy hormone, is made in your gut. So you think of how many
Wow.
people have
Wow.
anxiety, have depression, and I'm like, girl, guys, like all you got to do is just eat different. It's
Yeah, yeah.
crazy what decreasing inflammation can do in your body. Brain fog. Everyone thinks it's gluten
Yeah.
that makes brain fog, but you know why? It's because gluten is an allergen. It creates inflammation. So
Wow.
it's these subtle things are they're signs. They're not supposed to happen in your body. So they're signs. And I think we need to pay more attention to that, be more in tune with, I don't feel good. Well, no, you're not supposed to feel absolutely exhausted every single day of your life, right? You're not supposed to feel brain foggy and overwhelmed and super moody and full of anxiety and all these things. So how can inflammation be triggered? It's usually triggered by persistent infections. So, infections that your body, because you have a lower immune system, really is having a hard time fighting off. Autoimmune disorders or diseases. So things like Crohn's, things like lupus, autoimmune disease. But then also long-term exposure to toxins and allergens, which is the big thing that I kind of want to touch on, because I think, those other things are a little bit self-explanatory. But can you hear me? I feel like I'm cutting out.
You're good.
I'm good? Okay. So like I was saying,
Yep.
I feel like the big things, like autoimmune disorders and persistent infections are kind of self-explanatory in the sense that they would create that long-term inflammation, right? But long-term exposure to toxins and allergens can also create that inflammation. So toxins are, things in the environment, things in your shampoos, in your face wash, in your hand soaps. But allergens are foods, things like dairy, corn, soy, gluten, vinegar, white vinegar, processed sugars, nitrates, all those things. And I can almost guarantee you that there is at least 3 of those things in your daily life.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can start by eliminating those toxins and allergens, you are going to significantly decrease your inflammation, which will significantly decrease your risk of disease and cancer and make you feel a million times better.
Mm-hmm. How many people, if you had to throw your own homemade statistic out there, but what percentage of the population do you think is aware of the impact of inflammation on the body? And like, because I feel like so many people we just recycle food, we don't even, it's wrong for me to say that about everyone, because I know there are some people that really care and are conscious and self-aware about what they put in themselves, because they understand that ultimately, like you said, affects your hormones. It can help with the anxiety, it can affect everything, right? But what do you think? Do you think this is something that it clearly needs addressing, because so many people are dealing with everything you just talked about? I can think of 10 people off the top of my head right now that are dealing with either anxiety, brain fog, chronic fatigue, tiredness, just not a lot of motivation in life. And it leads me to beg the question, like, how many people are aware of something as simple as just becoming more conscious of what you're putting in you, eating an anti-inflammatory, more led diet, conscious diet, I should say.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's nothing to be ashamed of if you don't know. I think I want to make that, noted, that thankfully there is people like you that are making these things more, out there and, giving people those resources. But it really isn't talked about a lot. We don't really educate people in the healthcare system. We don't really make it well known as far as, food advertisements, because then half the things wouldn't be bought. I think a lot of people do think that because they're eating vegetables and not eating fast food, that they're eating healthy. And I've had lots of conversations with nurses, and they will show up to work and they'll have a piece of bread with peanut butter and a banana on it and white rice and say a whole bunch of vegetables and teriyaki sauce. And my mind goes, oh my gosh, like, you don't even know what you're giving your body right now. And when you think like peanut butter and bread and like a stir fry, that's so healthy, but gluten is an allergen, and it actually solely attacks your small intestine and creates inflammation. So bread is fine, but is it gluten-free?
Mm-hmm.
And if it is gluten-free, totally full of corn, because corn is also an allergen creating that inflammation. And peanut butter, peanuts are an allergen. Why do you think so many people are allergic to them? Because they create that inflammatory response,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
switching even from just that bread to, a flaxseed gluten-free bread, and then with almond butter or pumpkin seed butter instead of peanut butter. Still having
Mm-hmm.
the same thing, but it's just switching over those little things. And then white rice, inflammatory and zero nutrients in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then if you're having all these like vegetables and, you know, chicken, whatever, that's totally fine. But then you're pouring literally a cup full of teriyaki sauce, which has artificial, flavors, sweeteners, white vinegar, which is highly inflammatory, sugars, which is highly inflammatory. And I mean, those things I need to say everything in moderation is totally fine. But if you're thinking in your head that those foods are serving you, if you're having them on a daily basis, they're actually not,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think it's really important. My biggest change was, starting the alkaline diet, which is eliminating those foods. And I mean, I'll be honest with you right now, I pretty much do 80/20. So at home, I pretty much, eliminate them, I would say 99.9% of the time. When I go out, then I don't worry about it because it is in moderation, and because I know that I'm, serving my body and, reducing that inflammation 80-90% of the time, that when you go out, it's okay to not worry about it. You don't want to become obsessive with your food or about what you're eating, because that can lead to other issues. So I just think being aware of those things and just making those, changes, those small daily changes that then become habits that then over time are, adding health to your body instead of taking away.
Mhm. I think somebody in the audience has just had this thought, because I just had it, and I'm feeling like somebody else would be thinking this too. But you just shed a little bit of, I think, hope for somebody who is obviously very intrigued by this, but maybe having a very challenging time
Mhm.
making that full transition in the lifestyle, right? In the sense that you just brought forth that reality that, like, look, everything in moderation. You're not here to say, hey, it's got to be, you got to give up all the good food, all the, all those things that with artificial sweeteners, the breads, the peanut butters. I mean, all that stuff's good stuff. We all are typically, I would say, we're big fans of those types of foods, right? And I mean, you remind us all that we're human, right? There's going to come a time where you're going to want to go out with your girlfriends and just be able to enjoy the restaurant food, right? So I think that's important for people who are potentially in this mindset right now, or maybe having lights come on left and right around this idea of, maybe this is something I can try out to maybe help me live a better life, right? It's, guys, it doesn't have to be 100% all in. Nothing when you make a transition in life should be 100% all in, because that's where we see burnout. That's where we see people that can't stick to the plan, So it makes me want to know a little bit more is how did you make the transition? Take us back to like day one. You were making this transition. You mentioned that you had started your social networking business in parallel to this at that time in your life. Obviously that was a support system, I would imagine, for you, an education system, but also, there was still the doing. Aliesha had to do, physically make those changes in her life. How did you do that? Where did you start?
I'm actually so glad you asked this, because I think this is kind of an interesting story. But so, like you said, it all kind of, became a bigger thing when I started my social networking business. And it actually started because we have a 30-day program that we do, to help people and encourage people to live a healthier lifestyle and create those sustainable, healthy habits. So I was like, well, I can't be showing people how to do this if I don't do it myself. So I did it, and it's 30 days, and it's a little bit different now. We've tweaked it, but at the time it was very strict, and you eliminate all allergens. So that was on that list: gluten, dairy, corn, soy, all white vinegar, um, peanuts of any kind of nitrates, any processed sugar. And if you look at your food ingredients, that is in a lot of things. Like, did you
As the
know?
whole as the ho- I was just gonna say, as the host, I gotta ask you, what the hell were you eating? What were you living off of? You know, like,
Yeah,
I'm just thinking, like,
right?
I'm familiar. I'm a label reader when I shop, and like, I'm just thinking, like, everything's got every single one of those.
Did you know that salt and
uh,
vinegar chips have dairy in them with some brands?
Absolutely not. There's your fun fact for this Wednesday.
Yeah, like the craziest
Wow.
things will have. What was the other thing? Oh yeah, rice crackers, which are gluten free. Some of them have milk dairy products in them. Like, you
Wow.
just have no idea
Wow.
until you start reading how much of this. Again, you think you're eating, healthy, and then you're every day, putting some of these things into your body. So anyway, so I did this 30-day program, and oh my gosh, Dylan, the first week, I felt like I was going through the worst hangover of my life.
Oh,
Like,
wow. The body
I
adjusting.
I went through a terrible withdrawal. And this is coming from somebody who, I told you, like, I didn't drink, I don't smoke. I thought I was eating healthy. I was eating vegetables, fruits every day. Like, I would have oatmeal for breakfast or like a shake. Like, I had no idea. And I felt like absolute garbage. I almost gave up. And
Yeah.
then I had, somebody else like helping me through it. And long story short, 90% of my symptoms were gone by the time I did this 30-day program. And I had never felt better. My mind was clear. My motivation was like through the roof. My sense of um, my ability to like connect with my body and really kind of feel out certain symptoms and how I was feeling was like out of this world. I'd never experienced that before. I had so much energy. I lost like 12 pounds, and I was doing everything else the same. It was a
Wow.
craziest experience. And since then I've basically stuck to that 80% of the time. And now I've helped, so many people go through the same program. And I will say I haven't met one person that doesn't go through that withdrawal period.
Right.
And if
Right.
you think of that,
Well, I would think it's a given though, because it's like, it's no different than you sit on the couch for 3 months and you don't engage physical activity, and then you go through it. I mean, everybody that's getting back into fitness and pushing themselves, like, they're going to come through to that point where, like, you want to quit. They're going to come to that point where it's a transition. They're so sore. They just, they feel like, well, they start asking the question, why am I doing it? Right. And then you break down a bit, and then you really find out who you are, I think, in those moments, because that's where the going gets tough. And we know in life, that's where you find out a lot about yourself. But on the other side of that, and you, Aliesha, you can speak to it, you found out that sticking through led you to so much good here in your life. And it's obvious. You can see it in your happy soul. You know what I mean? Like, you feel good, you got good energy. It's contagious. And I think that speaks volumes, right? This is the end result, but we're speaking about those tough days you had to go through to get to where you are, and how that affected you. And it sounds like every which way.
totally. And I think it's important for people to know, if this is something that, intrigues them, or, maybe they want to, have their own journey, that to give yourself grace during this period of, change, right? There's nobody telling you that you need to do it any which way. It's not like if you have this, now that you know that you can't, that, you're not, doing good for your body. Like, give yourself grace as you start to learn, how you can really optimize your health.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's really important, and that just making those little changes that, they all count. And the more you become aware of it, the more you can start to build on that. And the more habits you can add onto and stack onto your daily life, you know? So I really like to say that just give yourself that grace during that period of change, because anything new is always hard, and it's not an easy transition to essentially restrict yourself from something. But if you really, change your thought process to wanting to just serve your body. And I mean, I have like this new appreciation for my body that I am just like so thankful for it. Like your heart is literally beating for you multiple times a day. Like your feet are stepping in front of one another every single time. Like we are breathing, we are digesting, we are fighting off things. Like as we were having this conversation, like I'm just like, man, like if I can help my body just by what I'm eating, like I want to do that.
Mm-hmm. You touched on something that I'm so passionate about, and I could do a whole show on it for 2 hours. Is just the idea of that exactly, and it's that we expect so much output of ourselves, but how much input do we really consciously care about? How much do we of our input, or this is getting into what last week's show was about, in the sense of how does somebody on in the world of yoga, not to get into that, but talking about like appreciation, gratitude, spirituality, in the sense of just appreciating yourself, what you put into you, because we're creatures of going and going and going and going and going. But and typically in the going fast-paced world, that's why so many of us end up at fast food restaurants. Quick, everything's quicker. How much quicker can I make this food to put me in me just to get me to that next day? Well, ultimately, guys, things compound in life, and I'm here to tell you that there comes a point in time where your body just says no, and that's where we lead in ourselves later into life. We walk ourselves from this point in time in our lives, if not earlier on. Me being a 27-year-old, we're both I believe in our 20s here, and I have to say that we walk ourselves to cancer. We walk ourselves into those terrible things, right? So were you giving me the head shake that you're like, I'm not in my 20s?
Yeah.
You give me the shit. You know what? Today you're in your 20s. We're you know what? With your energy and enthusiasm, that's it. I think age. My mom always raised me this way, but age is just a number, in the sense that if you're mentally young, you know what I mean. So hey, with 10 minutes left here, roughly, give or take, just want to chat a little bit about some of the ways that we can combat inflammation. I'm going to lean on you, the expert, the professional in the world of dealing with inflammation. Some just easy kind of tidbits for people to start to, maybe be like, hey, I'm taking this one thing from that Optimize Your Life show, because I think that I can apply this to my life. This is something that I at least want to try, give a go to. What are some things that have worked for you? What are some things that haven't worked for you? Maybe you can kick some myths to the curb. Maybe even potentially talk about some supplements out there that potentially have helped you as well.
All right. Well, I mean, this is a very long conversation. We could also do a whole show, I feel like, on just that. But now thinking about it. But so I would say the big thing is eliminating those foods that I mentioned before: gluten, dairy, corn, soy, and then, refined sugars and white vinegar. Anything that has any of those ingredients, trying to minimize them. It depends, how much you want to get into it. If you really kind of want to just like reset your body, eliminating those things for 30 days would be the best way to do it. Keeping in mind, like I said, that you would, most likely have a period of time that you would have some kind of withdrawal. So just being mindful of that. But if you're not able to do that, then, changing up those little habits, the little pieces every day. So, sorry, we just had somebody come home here.
Completely.
Yeah. So I would say, if you can change out one of your meals in the day and it doesn't have any of those ingredients in it, you are doing so much for yourself. And that is an amazing way to start. Maybe it's in the morning, and maybe you're going to make a smoothie and it has almond milk or oat milk instead of real milk. And you're having protein that doesn't have gluten in it, doesn't have dairy, doesn't have soy in it. and then you put in, some fats, and that's not peanut butter, but it's avocado or pumpkin seeds, and then you put in a fruit, so it's frozen berries. Berries are typically less high in sugar, which I didn't really mention before, but if you're eating things, even fruits that are high in sugar, then you have a higher glycemic index. And you can look into that after too, but basically anything that has a high glycemic index will create that spike in your blood sugar. So it's like when you eat a banana, before a race, that fruit has a high glycemic index, and it'll spike your blood sugar. But any spike in blood sugar also produces inflammation in your body. So we typically suggest to eat, more berries, less things like pineapple or cantaloupe or things like that. So putting that in your shake, and then putting in, some vegetables, spinach or kale or something like that. And that morning, you've already eliminated all those things and you've served your body. And then, maybe you like how you feel after you do that. So then you do that 3 times more that week. And then maybe 2 weeks later, you've done that, then you've done it 5 days in a row, and then that it becomes easier to not have those things in the morning, like toast and eggs with cheese on it or something like that, right? So I would just say starting small, and just becoming more aware of it. If you can go, out for dinner and you can order brown rice instead of white rice, do that, because, it serves your body. If you can, have chicken instead of soy or something, do that. So there's really, we are so set up for it in this day and age. There's so many different things that you can have. And then just to quickly touch on when you're saying about supplements, there's not a lot of supplements that would help support an alkaline diet or decreasing inflammation, other than things that would help support your gut health. So when I was talking before about, 80% of your serotonin, your happy, hormone being made in your gut, you can see why it's super important to serve your gut. And I just want to quickly say, if you are eating healthy, but you're in a state of inflammation, your digestive system isn't actually going to absorb things properly. So that's why it's really important, if you're really serious about this and you're like, holy crap, like I need to reset my body and I want to, from today, start, doing better, being better, you need to give your body a break from those foods. That's just, if you want to be like really, black and white about it, you need to give your body that break, because that's going to then bring you down to, a less acidic environment within your body, and your body will better absorb the nutrients. Like I said, it doesn't have to be done that way. Any small steps that you make are also really great. But supporting your gut health with things like pre and probiotics is a really, really good start as well. Our gut flora needs that bacteria, that good and bad bacteria. And so with pre and probiotics, that's amazing. And then as well, digestive enzymes. Typically by the time you're a teenager, you've actually lost a lot of your digestive enzymes, which is also, in part why a lot of people have digestive issues between that and inflammation. So if you can take a digestive enzyme, half an hour before you eat, that's also really helpful. Another fun tip is don't drink a lot of fluids or water while you're eating. A lot of people,
I've heard that before.
Yeah, and so that's
why is that?
It's because the digestive enzymes in your stomach help break things down. If you're diluting that, then it's harder for your body to break that down. So, half an hour before, have your water, a few sips while you're eating is totally fine. But if you really want to like maximize that, digestion and the ability to break down those foods, then, not having a bunch of fluids in your stomach while you're eating can really help too. And it'll just help you really reabsorb all those foods that you're eating properly.
Yeah. So real quickly, it's commonly associated with inflammation, but the idea of turmeric in the sense of why is that so often associated to lower inflammation? What's your thoughts on it? In has it been something you've ever used or?
I used to take turmeric pills, but I think the thing with turmeric is that it's medicinally, traditionally used for its anti-inflammatory properties, right? So there's a lot of, herbs out there that have those properties, but I mean, to be honest, at the end of the day, if you're having those, turmeric pills and you're eating a bunch of inflammatory foods, you're not really going to do anything for yourself. So I think it really, Dylan, comes down to making these small changes every day to help decrease your long-term effect of inflammation. And if you're decreasing your risk of inflammation, then you're decreasing your risk of those normal cells becoming altered and becoming potentially cancerous and disease. So,
Mhm.
and like I said, giving yourself grace during that period, but just becoming more aware of how you can, create those changes, make those sustainable habits so that you really are serving your body, and feeling the best that you can feel.
Mhm, mhm. I think ultimately what I hear from you, the theme of this is engaging in a behavior or taking the action, either or, of something that's you personally feel like you can sustain, and
Mhm.
then compounding that over a certain amount of time to hopefully see those changes and feel the changes. And I think that that's the thing about this is it's so hard for many of us to get a week in and then like all of a sudden we want that white rice or we want that peanut butter. And so I'm hoping you can leave us with this, not only a bit of motivation, inspiration. You've clearly inspired a lot of us here today, but what I want you to share is how to fight that given the given through your personal experience, how did you fight the given? Like it's too easy to go back to what we know, right? So how did you fight that?
What do you mean by like the given, first of all, just so that I get this?
The give in to the idea of you're making a even if you make a small change, there's gonna come that day where, like you said, you're down, you're kind of going through that tough transition, you're having a tough time fighting it, and you want to go back to that old diet or that inflammatory filled diet, right? Like, how did you fight going back to the food specifically that caused that inflammation when you were going through that transition?
Well, okay, so I think the big thing is just how you feel. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing that compares to feeling your best. And I really did feel my best. And I feel my best now, and you can't willingly want to give that up.
Mhm.
So I think once you've been to that place, um, it's really hard to go back. And I think in this day and age, also I'm sure being a nurse and being surrounded by disease and cancer and all these diagnoses, um, I'm sure that honestly does play a part of it. That there's that just that maybe more widened sense of how much of that is potentially out there. um
Mhm.
I think maybe sometimes it's nice to be naive to that, but at the end of the day, I mean, those things are very much a risk for everybody, no matter your lifestyle. So I think it really does have to come down to, do you want to lead a healthy lifestyle? Do you want to feel your best? And y- to be honest, you do have to put work into that kind of lifestyle, right? So are you
Mhm.
willing to change a little bit? Are you willing to educate, take some time to learn about this, learn about that, take time to make those changes? Are you willing to kind of feel it out and feel like something doesn't feel normal or doesn't feel like a routine but kind of ride with that because you know that it's going to serve you. So, I don't want to sit here and say, oh, it's all super easy and it's, the best thing ever. Well, it is when you feel really great, but it is something that you have to want to do, because it is a change, and change is hard, but it is 1000% worth it. You are worth it, and you will not regret it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love the confidence, the excitement in your voice that I can hear for people that are going to try and take some tips from this and ultimately help them. It's funny how sometimes it's so fitting, but optimize their life in a way, right? And
Yeah.
Aliesha, I want to say this to wrap up the show. There's a few things I want to get to, just talking about your social networking business. So I'm going to let you finish with that.
Mm-hmm.
But guys, there's more than one way to be rich in this life and in this world we live. In the old days, it's all about the money, guys. I'm telling you right now, Aliesha joining us here for these 45 to 50 minutes, we've all just become, rich in value of helping us all lead a better life. And so for that, I want to thank you today just for taking the time out. This is going to reach a lot of people, and, a lot of people are going to be sitting down. YouTube is either the new or old or remodified Netflix, in the sense that a lot of people spend time on here. Instagram, we're all social media creatures. We like to spend time. And for me, what it's about is bringing value to you guys. But ultimately, I couldn't do it without guests like Aliesha. So I want to thank you. You made us all rich in just adding a ton of value around something that I know a lot of us have thought about it, at least maybe had a thought or two, but there's not a lot of information that's just being, popping out about it, right? And so I like to take things from underneath the rug and kind of bring them into a real life setting where we can actually talk about it and educate people. And thank you. Before I conclude my last words, where can we check you out on Instagram? Instagram, I know you have a little bit of your online business. Do you share information on there as well? Maybe those are two questions you can answer.
Yeah, I mean, I like to, Dylan, share kind of just my lifestyle. I just like to show people, that, again, like, I feel like I'm a healthy living enthusiast, and I just want people to know that living, a healthy life really can just fit into everybody's life. So I try to really promote that on my social networking space, I guess you could say. But it's Ali Day R is my Instagram. And I mean, if anybody ever has any questions, I am an open book. I love to chat about it. Obviously there is some things with products on there. I talk a lot about I think our digestion and how you can add. I do a lot of recipes on there, which is really fun. But yeah, I'm always down for questions, and I hope that this at least, intrigued people, inspired people to just make a few, little changes in their everyday life that are going to be sustainable to them and really optimize their health.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, this was episode 13 here on Instagram, episode 2 on YouTube. If you haven't already, like, subscribe on Instagram, on YouTube, Optimizenutrition.ca. Check out Aliesha, because I'm excited for what you just said, to get a little bit of inspiration around how we can eat, how we can look at cooking a little bit differently, and check it out. Ultimately, if you're not willing to invest in yourself, how can you invest in anything in your life, right? So that's my belief. I internally believe that through and through. Like, if you can't look after yourself, you can't really be a good boyfriend, you can't be a good husband, you can't be a good friend. So hey guys, it doesn't need to be drastic. It needs to be minute and sustained. So thank you for educating us. And Ali, have a great day. Enjoy the weekend here. Enjoy the week here, I guess, before the weekend. But thank you. Appreciate you.
Thanks so much, Dylan. Take care.
No problem.
Bye.
Bye.